What is going on, Stacking the Box? My name is Mike Luciano, back again for another NFL recap show, Week 14. One of the better weeks of the year, if I'm allowed to inject my opinion into this, which I am, because it's my show. So, boy, was this a great week. I mean, upsets, tons of scoring, tons of touchdowns, crazy comebacks, big teams playing each other. About everything you could want this holiday season. So thank you for choosing to spend part of your Monday night with us. If you're getting off work, if you're maybe driving to work, working late, whatever it may be, however you're listening, thank you so much. As always, you can subscribe to Stacking the Box on YouTube. Make sure to download us on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're all there. Make sure you like this stream. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. Again, not for ego. That is just to pump us up those review charts, baby, because that is how it works. So thank you for showing your support. That way, we are eternally grateful for however you do choose to show it. Let's dive right into what happened in Week 14, and then we'll also take a look at two Monday Night Football games, not just one, but two. The Titans and the Dolphins and the Packers and the Giants. But before all that, our one big takeaway this week, and it's the Dallas Cowboys. And I genuinely feel bad for the Cowboys because with how easy the Eagles' schedule is to end the year, Giants, Cardinals, Giants, I don't know if they can necessarily overtake them to maybe win the NFC East. Thing will require basically winning out and the Eagles slipping up. But I am just so impressed with the Dallas Cowboys this year, who I think personally are the second best team in the NFL right now, number one being the 49ers. I think the Cowboys are pretty firm number two. And there's a reason for that. I mean, the running game has been getting better lately. The defense is still phenomenal, even without Trayvon Diggs. They've got playmakers at pretty much every level there. Obviously, we don't need to go chapter and verse about Micah Parsons or Deron Bland or Stephon Gilmore or any of those guys. But it all ties back to Dak Prescott, a guy who I feel bad for in that because he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, there's just going to be extra hot takey stuff from the national media that seeps onto him. And it's a shame because if you remove the Cowboys aspect of it, Dak Prescott should be a guy that NFL Twitter just fawns over. I know film Twitter does, but generally NFL Twitter doesn't. Such an easy guy to root for, such a great playmaker, such a great downfield thrower, accurate, throws a ton of touchdowns, makes something out of nothing. Hard to really find too many faults with his game, especially this season. He beats Jalen Hurts, another MVP candidate in Jalen Hurts, pretty soundly. And I'm going to be honest, I think they probably should have won at Philly the first time. I think Dallas has proven themselves as a more complete team than the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, and Prescott, for whatever maybe they're even in a lot of areas, Dak is that X factor. Earlier in his career, he was always really good and he was really hyper efficient. And then he'd make some plays and you're like, oh, wow. And then every single year, every iteration of this Cowboys team, more plays and more plays just keep stacking up. Now, this year, he's a full-blown elite quarterback. He's playing like a top 5 quarterback. Some would even say a top 1 this year with Patrick Mahomes having a down year. We'll get to Patrick Mahomes a little bit later. With Josh Allen having a down year, Lamar Jackson not having the ascension as a passer because he's still really, really insanely good. Not necessarily having the gaudy numbers some would have expected under Todd Monken. Dak has filled that hole. And it's really hard to just deny it at this point because the whole knock on him was, well, let's see him beat a good team. Well, now he's beat a good team. Defensively, they have problems, but that's a great Eagles team. Players everywhere, experienced, veteran team. That's a good-ass team. And he just beat the hell out of them in front of everybody. Philly, on the other hand, boy, Eagles fans were quick to just rip Jonathan Gannon and call Jonathan Gannon a dope and a stuttering guy, and he didn't know what he was doing, and he lost us the Super Bowl. Jonathan Gannon be looking pretty good right now, huh? Jonathan Gannon would have this team, I think, with a couple extra wins this year, if I'm being totally honest. Because Jonathan Gannon's replacement, Sean Desai, I know that I always am over the fire coordinator stuff, especially from a couple fan bases that I think are a little bit spoiled, with the Eagles among them in the last couple years. But Desai is really not making a strong case for retention because this secondary is terrible. Darius Slay having a tough year. Good player, tough year. James Bradbury, same thing. Good player, tough year. The addition of Kevin Byard has not really helped as much as I thought it would. Reed Blankenship, whatever. The linebacking core is not very good. Like, it's easy for people to take victory laps on Jalen Hurts, and I don't want to do that. I don't think Jalen Hurts is as good as people saying he is, even though he is good. But the last couple of games, I mean, I don't think Jalen Hurts, he is not a top 5 problem on this Eagles team. I think they'll fix the problems, and they get a couple of cream puffs later in the year to fix it against the Giants twice and Arizona. Lucky them. But they're going to be in the playoffs. And there's a good chance they're going to get Dallas or San Francisco again. If they want to get to a Super Bowl, they certainly have to get through at least one of those teams. And I just don't see a path to winning either of those games right now. In the last couple of weeks, I think, have really proved it, that they're a very, very, very good team. One of the best in the league. But I think San Francisco is definitely a cut above. And because of Dak going Super Saiyan over the last couple of games, I believe he has 22 touchdowns and 2 picks since week 6, which is just mind-boggling. I think he's a difference maker, and he's sort of set Dallas apart from the Eagles. And I kind of want the Cowboys to at least break through, just personally. I don't mind the Cowboys breaking through this year because they've had some really good teams and they keep coming up short. I want Dak to get some vindication. I don't really have like a dog in this fight necessarily for really either conference, but if the Cowboys win, that'd be really good for Dak because he deserves it. He's been working hard, overcoming a lot. And I think finally, even in a Brian Schottenheimer offense, all the improvements he's made in his game are really starting to show. So now it's time for the stock report. Who is going up? Who is hot? And who is going down? Were there some real stinkers individually and collectively this week. But let's start on a positive note. Talk about the other great team in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, who have Brock Purdy. I'm not necessarily a Brock Purdy MVP guy, and I'm certainly not saying he's a system quarterback. I think he's at least, well, he gets a huge, huge boost from Kyle Shanahan. I don't think he's like the Jimmy Garoppolo level of system quarterback, but he's putting up numbers. I mean, 9.9 yards per attempt, 10.4 adjusted yards per attempt. I believe any quarterback that has had those numbers has won MVP. I believe it's like one of the highest ever. So that puts him on a good MVP track. Passer rating of 116.9, by far and away leading the league. Adjusted net yards per attempt, 9.33. And he's doing all this while leading the league, here's a paradox, in both touchdown percentage and completion percentage. So he's hunting for big plays, and he's doing it with efficiency. Now, I know he didn't have Geno Smith challenging him in this game. I actually thought Drew Lock played okay given the circumstances, but this was a game the 49ers just had to win. And boy, oh boy, did Brock Purdy finally put together, he's put together games that statistically I think have been better, but the last couple weeks have been his best games irrefutably, I think, on film, and they've kind of broken the mold and kind of said, you know what? He's getting helped by this system. Trent Williams is great. Christian McCaffrey is a godsend. Deebo Samuel's maybe the most unique player in the league. Nobody can play like him. But Brock Purdy is getting it done on his own. Jimmy Garoppolo did not do this. If he had Jimmy Garoppolo's exact numbers, all right, this is going beyond the pale at this point. The Niners are 15-3 in his starts. And again, the 3 losses were all in a row, and they were just when everybody was hurt and they had this weird funk around them. Outside of that, unblemished. I think they're the clear favorites in the NFL right now. And that would make it now 2 Super Bowls in San Francisco for Kyle Shanahan and 4 NFC Championship games if they get there with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy, which is a hell of an achievement. It's a hell of a job of coaching. Bills Chiefs. I've gone over the struggles of the Chiefs offense in the last couple of episodes. Now, because they have Patrick Mahomes back there, he just makes up for so much of it. Legitimately, without Patrick Mahomes, I think this is a bottom 5 offense. Good offensive line, all right, fine. Not as good as last year. Isaiah Pacheco, certainly above average, but not really a difference maker. Horrible, horrible receiving core, as evidenced by the fact that in the last couple of weeks, they've taken 2 wins away from him on late drives. The Kadarius Toney offsides, taking away the Travis Kelce crazy lateral in this game. And then Marquez Valdes-Scantling against the Eagles, just dropping a perfectly placed deep shot near the end of the game. Patrick Mahomes, though, for a guy who's normally extremely humble and all about the teammates and I want to win and normally seems kind of even-keeled in the press, like he talks trash on the field, but he seems like a kind of an even-keeled guy for a quarterback. He just lost his mind on the officials and in the post-game press conference. And as a quarterback, 15 is beyond reproach. His legacy's secure. He's already got multiple rings, multiple MVPs. Nothing you can say really at this point to ding him there. But man, that was I don't know if this is going to be insulting. That was whiny. That was very whiny. And such a punch down for a quarterback of his stature, I think is the best way to frame it. To go on this rant about, the officials got to let him play. This is hurting Travis Kelce's Hall of Fame career. Call it right. Give us a warning. Like, look, the officials make bad calls all the time. Number one, that wasn't one of them. The Toney one. He was clearly offsides. He was practically in the Bills' box. The Bills probably had an extra guy on defense because he was so far up the field. And then to spend all your post-game press conference going after those guys, not a good look, man. It makes you look like you don't know how to handle losing. Now, I know he does, because he has lost some big games and he's responded very well. But the optics of it do not look good. I'm sure he's going to come out with some sort of apology. Not like a prepared statement, but just, you know what, I lost my cool. And that's all you need to say. You know what, heat of the moment. I went a little nuts, lost my cool. Let's move on. Because if he doesn't and all the Chiefs just keeps banging on about this, that's very hateable, in my opinion. Jets-Texans, if you had told me, number one, that this 0-0 game at halftime would end 30-6, I would have been surprised. And then if you told me Zach Wilson would be putting up the 30 points and not C.J. Stroud, I would be even more surprised. But Zach Wilson, 27 of 36, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, far and away best game of his career. Kansas City game, the Titans game his rookie year, far and away the best one this game. And I think finally the coaching staff saw what everybody else has been seeing for a very long time. Zach Wilson under pressure when he needs to play well is awful, god-awful. Not even on NFL roster level good. When he goes out there with a wing-it, F-it mentality and plays that whole backyard football thing that we saw at BYU, there's a lot to like there. Genuinely. Because the arm talent and the physical stuff, like the escapability, that was never in question for a second. It was always mental. Can he read the field? What is he seeing? What is he not seeing? And nobody could ever figure it out because sometimes it clicks and it works well. And you're like, why can't this be every time? This is Zach at his absolute best. And how about that Jets defense? This was C.J. Stroud, everybody's darling, deserved Rookie of the Year runaway, as much of a runaway as I've seen in years, a decade maybe, completely shut him down, that Jets defense. Didn't get across midfield until the second half. The only score came on a Wilson fumble, so they got very good field position. And then obviously Stroud gets injured and Davis Mills doesn't help, but this was a domination of a good team. Jets fans might want to fire Robert Saleh, not me. Not me, because this team plays hard for him. And if he gets a quarterback, which next year is going to be Aaron Rodgers, and the offense looks like this, look out for him. Broncos-Chargers, this one hurts me. Because I've been a Kellen Moore defender for so long. I thought he was going to be great with Justin Herbert, and he has looked good with Herbert. 13 points in 2 weeks, man. 13 points in 2 weeks. And now to make things worse, Herbert is reportedly going to have surgery on his right index finger. There's a good chance his season is over. It should be over. There's no reason for him to play on a bad Chargers team that's not going to go anywhere. in the postseason if they even make this miracle run. Just lose out with Easton Stick, who's been a backup since 2019, is finally going to get a chance to start. Just let Easton Stick go out there and take your lumps, and then we'll try it again next year. But Kellen Moore, I at least thought, even if they fired Brandon Staley, Kellen Moore made a strong case for retention. Not anymore, man. Not anymore. He's probably going to go. Now, he'll get another OC job, but this is not a good look. Number one, Easton Stick's best trait is his mobility. He was never running. And then even when you got Justin Herbert, 6 points against the Patriots, and he looked bad before he got hurt against the Broncos, certainly not a good look. Good look for Denver, though. The defense. This Denver defense, I got to shout out Vance Joseph. People were calling for his head on a pike. And here he comes out after getting as humiliated as a defensive coordinator can get in a single game, in that 70-point game. Made wholesale changes. And this defense is not only improved, it's fantastic. It's probably like a top 10 defense. I'm stunned. Jaws on the floor. That's responsible for the Broncos turning it around and becoming a viable wildcard team as much as anything Russell Wilson and that offense are doing, in my opinion. Bengals Colts. Is Joe Burrow's system quarterback? Joking, obviously, but man, Jake Browning, you got to give this guy credit. He has now had 3 different starts, and honestly, in all of them, looked competent. Now, I know he lost to Pittsburgh, but this is a guy who in 3 starts, or counting a bunch of, let's just do the 3 starts, because that's when Browning's had a full week to really prepare for things. Even though he doesn't have a great arm, he's come out there and he's completed 79% of his passes. 79! 69 of 87. 856 yards, which if you do it at a per 17 game pace, about 4,900 yards. 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, passer rating of 113. He's run for 2 more touchdowns. I'm thrilled for Jake Browning because this stretch alone has guaranteed him probably 5 or 6 more years of backup contracts. Generational wealth because of this stretch. I'm so happy for Jake Browning doing it against a Colts defense that I know that Minshew struggled in this game, but this defense for the Colts was really playing well last couple of weeks. Jake Browning lights him up. But credit to Zach Taylor, because when Joe Burrow went down, they could have just given up. And they could have said, that's it. Joe Burrow was our season. At 5-6, we're done. They've won 2 more games against good teams, Jacksonville and Indianapolis, with Browning playing great football. One of the primary reasons that they've done it. Shout out to Zach Taylor, man. He can put together a game plan for a quarterback, man. Even with Jake Browning, who I know Burrow doesn't have like a insane, like just arm talent, like how hard can you throw a ball, but Jake Browning is worse. And they've still been able to get him going down the field, get him going with accurate passes. The receivers look great. I'm genuinely stunned by how seamless this has looked. Like if you took the numbers off the jersey, you couldn't tell the difference sometimes between Jake Browning and Joe Burrow. I'm stunned, and I'm so happy for Jake Browning, a great college quarterback who's been through a lot of injuries, been through a bunch of practice squad stuff. Now he's getting a chance to really strut himself, and he looks fantastic. Vikings Raiders, stock down. Just us, just our eyes. What in God's name was that? Not only was it 3-0, but the points came like right near the end of the game, which is, I guess, what happens when you have Josh Dobbs. Man, the bloom is off the rose with Josh Dobbs, man. He got benched in this game. Josh Dobbs and Aiden O'Connell going at it. Certainly not what you want. I feel bad for Antonio Pierce because I think he's done a very good job with this Raiders team. I just think that he doesn't have a quarterback, and it's on purpose because they want to see if Aiden O'Connell is anything. I think this game may have helped confirm that he might not be anything more than like a solid backup. He's certainly not Jimmy Garoppolo's level, and that's saying a lot. I think the Raiders will be in the market for a quarterback this draft, if I'm being honest. They keep losing like this, with Pierce or without Pierce. I think 1 and 2, I think Chicago and New England. Caleb, Drake May. We'll get to Chicago later, even though Justin Fields is playing really well. It'll be Caleb and Drake May. The Giants, I still think will be around there. Maybe they end up with Jaden Daniels. And then I think the Raiders probably have the fourth chance at it. Maybe Michael Penix, maybe Bo Nix. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is declaring, but you never know. Tough watch, man. Now, great if you like defensive football, and not legitimately, because they were playing bad quarterbacks, but Brian Flores was cooking all game long. And I ripped Brian Flores earlier in the year because Justin Herbert went like 42 of 47 against him or something preposterous, and the Chargers beat him. He's learned, and he has this system, man. He is coming at you, and he doesn't care about it. And sometimes quarterbacks can just get spooked. And boy, oh boy, did Aiden O'Connell look spooked in this atrocity of a football game. So now it's time for rapid fire takes where we check out the remaining games and then we'll get you set on the Monday night preview. Starting with Bucs Falcons. The Falcons are one of the weirdest teams this year that I've ever seen. Desmond Ridder, if you want to go EPA per play by quarter, first quarter, 29th in the league. Bad. Second quarter, 30th in the league. Bad. Third quarter, 29th in the league. Bad. Fourth quarter, third. He has 4 game-winning drives and then a couple others that he's lost because the defense couldn't hold up. He's a legitimately clutch quarterback. I don't know how it happens. He was balling in that game after some early struggles. And you know what? It didn't matter. Baker Mayfield is not playing lights-out insane football, but when he signed with Tampa, did anybody expect 20 touchdowns and 8 picks? And albeit with a below 500 team, but a team that's leading the division right now, did anybody expect that? Everybody was very quick to dance on Baker Mayfield's grave. I feel like this performance this year has confirmed beyond a shadow of doubt that he's going to be back in Tampa, definitely next year. And who knows? Maybe beyond that. I think he'll legitimately, even though I don't think he's this good, I think he'll get one of those Geno Smithy, Daniel Jonesy contracts where you get a lot of money up front. It's like a 3-year deal. You get a lot of money up front in year 1, and then there's outs after that. So he's to keep proving himself, but he gets rewarded and paid like a starting quarterback. Because I think this year's proven he's a starting quarterback in this league, and he can win you games in this league. And plus, if he comes back, he finally gets some consistency, some familiarity. They're not firing their coordinators over and over again. He can just stick in a place and learn a system. I think that'll be good for everybody involved. I think Tampa has some clear holes, but they're not as far off, I think, from really being a viable team as some people think they are. Browns-Jaguars. I respect Trevor Lawrence immensely for going out there because the discussion was going to be, is he out for the year? Is he going to come back for the playoffs? How much time will he miss? 6 days after a high ankle sprain, he could barely walk. He's out there playing the Browns, but it showed that he was injured. He was not as mobile as he normally is. 3 interceptions. Granted, one was not his fault, the second one to Ridley. And then one, you very clearly could see, I think the first one, that if his leg wasn't hurting, his mechanics were better, that's probably not a pick. 3 touchdowns still, yes, and he was the only reason the Jags were in that game, but I don't know. I probably would have just gone with Beathard, let him take the lumps. But the Browns, Joe Flacco, who last year for the Jets looked depressed. He didn't even want to be out there. Breathing life into one of his old rivals from the Baltimore days in the Cleveland Browns. After struggling with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I like as a rookie, but he was playing poorly, and P.J. Walker, who I don't even know, he's still in the league. Then they go to Flacco, immediate offensive upgrade. He's already the starter for the rest of the year. And with this defense playing how it is, there's a legitimate chance that Joe Flacco is going to end up in the postseason as the starting quarterback of the Browns. Who would have ever thought that? It's just, it's shocking in a good way, though. Because Joe Flacco, he just seems like a guy. I know I was saying that he was depressed near the end of the Jets season because he just didn't look like he was super engaged, but this guy just loves football. He's going to be 39 years old in January, and he's still an effective quarterback. Did you know in his career, Joe Flacco was almost 43,000 yards passing? He's like top 25 in most quarterback categories. It sounds weird to say this about a guy who won the Super Bowl and who's kind of been so iffy the last couple of years, backup bouncing around. Joe Flacco is kind of an underrated career if you look at it in totality. Ravens-Rams. I think certainly the game of the early window, if you just want to go by pure adrenaline. It's weird watching Baltimore. Obviously, they're an amazing team. But I think Lamar Jackson, in a good way and a bad way a little bit, is becoming Seahawks Russell Wilson. Now, good way. He's freakishly, nightmarishly good. Oh, my word, in that second half. That is a one-man offense. And he just continues to make plays. I know he doesn't have the numbers, but most valuable player doesn't necessarily mean most valuable. It's a lot of times best numbers. But in terms of value to an offense, Lamar might win every year. He's just that insanely important and insanely good. That's also the bad part, I think. It reminds me of, remember how Seattle with Russell Wilson would fire a bunch of coordinators and move them in, but it would always look like the same sort of offense. The sack numbers would be high, a lot of those deep moon ball stuff, run heavy. It was the Russell Wilson offense. Even with Todd Monken, this is the Lamar Jackson offense. I think they'll be fine in the postseason. I think they're a really deep team, but I feel like that's where kind of their struggles have shown up, is because you can't do the Lamar Jackson offense in the postseason all the time. Just doesn't work like that. Next couple weeks, like Lamar will be fine, but the next couple weeks, I got to see more from a lot of their wide receivers, especially with Mark Andrews out. Some of these wide receivers, Zay Flowers, Odell, you can't just let Lamar dominate on his own. Now, they did an okay job at some points last game, but when they really needed to score, it was, all right, Lamar, take over. And that'll help work in the regular season. Won't work as well in the postseason. Bears-Lions. It's funny how Justin Fields just becomes this insanely good quarterback whenever he plays the Lions. It's like Brady against the Bills, how he would never lose to the Bills. Roethlisberger against the Browns. Justin Fields against the Lions is a different beast. And as much as I want to rip the Lions for now, second game in 3 weeks, they've had a real genuine stinker. And I think it's kind of, I don't think they're really going to get to an NFC championship game. They're going to be good. Like, they're going to, I think, get to the postseason. Jared Goff struggled yesterday. I still think he's a very good quarterback. They got the personnel. They got the coaching staff. They'll be okay. They'll get to the postseason, which for the Lions and that franchise, that's what they need right now. This game is more about the Bears. Because if you look at them right now, they're 5-8. And if they didn't have a crazy, almost historic collapse against the Broncos, they'd be 6-7, and that's a viable playoff team in the NFC right now. Justin Fields, in his last 6 games, has a passer rating of 104, and he's running the ball at a pace that would almost be like 900 yards for the entire season. This is legitimately really good football he's playing. And the defense in the last 3-ish games, 4-ish games, pretty much since they got Montez Sweat, they've been a top 10 unit in like yards per game, points allowed. Montez Sweat is making a gigantic impact on this team. This is the dilemma Ryan Poles is going to have to face, because let's say Justin Fields plays every game for the rest of this year like he did against the Lions. So now you get year 3, he's ascending, familiar scheme, DJ Moore's there, and the team played hard for Matt Eberflus at the end. Then what do? Do you still clean house? Do you still go number 1 at Caleb Williams or Drake May and then trade Fields to a team like, I don't know, Atlanta or Pittsburgh, or not Minnesota because they're in the division, but a team like that who needs a young quarterback to kind of rally around and still get a haul for Fields and then take a guy number 1? Or do you say, you know what? We're fine with Justin Fields. It's hard to find quarterbacks in this league. We think we got a guy. The defense improved a lot. Let's get a huge franchise-altering haul for number 1, still end up reinforcing all the positions we need to reinforce. We end up getting another offensive lineman. We get more receivers. We build Fields the best offense he's ever had. I guarantee you there's a segment of that front office and Ryan Poles that's thinking, if we do that, we can build a winner on Justin Fields. Earlier in the year, that looked impossible. Pretty much since October, first 3 games, he was unwatchable. Awful. Since October, when he had that Broncos game, He's been a pretty good quarterback outside of that Minnesota stinker, which again, he got hurt halfway through. Fields is legitimately playing really well, and they have a decision to make. It is not as automatic as some may have thought a couple weeks ago. If you want to get the most depressing game of the week, Saints-Panthers, man. The Saints scored 28 points, and Derek Carr ended up with 2 touchdown passes, but this was not a banner game for Derek Carr. 18 of 26 and 2 touchdowns sounds good. 119 yards in that. And again, at one point, I believe Alvin Kamara, this is crazy, 3 catches, negative 11 yards, and 44 of Carr's 119 came on 1 play to A.T. Perry. So this was not a good showing. Now, they won by the skin of their teeth, but again, it was Bryce Young, man. 13 of 36 with a fumble. Like, I know the team is bad. I know the Panthers are bad. I know no quarterback would really be amazing with this team. I know that they fired Frank Reich and they have a special teams coach in Chris Tabor, who's currently the head coach. I get all of that, and those are all valid reasons, not excuses, reasons as to why Bryce Young's playing poorly. Having said that, this is stunning. For a number 1 pick to be this bad? Who picked number 1 since Jamarcus Russell has been this bad as a quarterback in the rookie year? You can name all the ones. Sam Bradford was not this bad. Sam Bradford was actually okay for a guy. Yeah, that's a guy who had nothing around him. And Sam Bradford actually played pretty well for Jeff Fisher early on some of those Rams teams. I wish he got a better situation. But, I mean, let's just go since Jamarcus Russell. Matthew Stafford, rough rookie year, not this bad. Sam Bradford, okay. Cam Newton, great rookie year. Andrew Luck, great rookie year. Jameis Winston made a Pro Bowl. Jared Goff might be the other one, but he didn't start as much as Bryce Young did. And honestly, and then what do you know, next year he was unbelievable because they just had a wholesale change. So Jared Goff might be the only other one, but the sample size isn't as big. Trevor Lawrence was bad. Burrow was okay. Trevor Lawrence wasn't very good, but that was all of Urban Meyer, and you could see it. Like, you knew he was going to be good. Like, you could see it. Everybody could see it. This guy, I don't right now. This might be a little hot takey. And maybe Arthur Tate says Carolina's the worst team in the league. Certainly now. Here's what I would ask if you're the worst team in the league, Carolina. And I'm legitimately asking this. Not even trying to be funny. If they had their number 1 pick this year, is there a thought in that organization, let's just take Caleb Williams or Drake May and have Bryce Young be somebody else's problem? I think because they don't have it, they're going to give him another year. But this has regressed to a point where actually his QBR is beneath Zach Wilson right now. That's how bad he's been this year. It's regressed to a point where I still don't think I would do that. But the fact you have to have a conversation about it, in my opinion, I think that says a lot. I feel bad for this guy, I really do. Because he's got put into a meat grinder and he's done nothing to really escape it. So it's just mutually smashing in on him. And I feel bad. I really do. And with that, we now get a doubleheader of Monday Night Football games. The Titans and the Dolphins and the Packers and the Giants. Let's start with the Packers and the Giants. Because I am man enough to admit when I'm wrong on a lot of these takes. And Jordan Love has proved me equivocally wrong. I thought that Jordan Love had nothing going for him. I thought that he was inaccurate. I thought that he had weird mechanics. And I thought that he was wasting some good offensive coaching from Matt LaFleur. And then he comes out the last couple weeks and is not only beating good teams and playing well, but dropping dimes all over the field. The arm talent, I'm waiting for this arm talent to show up. Like, yeah, he could throw it far, but where's the arm talent? Arm talent showed up, man. Last couple games. Jordan Love has been cooking. I believe he has 22 touchdown passes this year. The Packers are now a legitimate wild card team. I think if the season ended right now, they'd be in the wild card. And I got to credit Matt LaFleur for that because Matt LaFleur proved, in my opinion, too, he's not just mooching off of Aaron Rodgers and it's not just along for the ride. This is a smart offensive coach who knows how to develop quarterbacks. And he's done it with Love, who, for God's sakes, before this year, the last year we saw him be a good starter was 2018 at Utah State. Because 2019, he was not good. And the last 3 years, he barely played. Jordan Love, as shocking and as startling an in-season improvement from a quarterback with a body workload, like the first half of the year almost, he was terrible. And now he looks like a totally different quarterback. As seismic as I can remember. And now we're finally starting to see that maybe the Packers have a good team outside of Jordan Love. They have a running game still. Offensive line, not great, but I think it's been better the last couple weeks. Defense, certainly, I think, is very good. I don't know if Joe Barry's great, but personnel-wise, they got a lot of good players. Maybe the most underrated defensive back in the league is still Jair Alexander. Just an absolute shutdown guy. I think Green Bay, in a division where next year, the Bears, although they've improved, I still don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. They might be rebuilding again. Vikings may not have a quarterback because of the whole Kirk Cousins thing. I think the Packers could set themselves up to be a perennial playoff team again if they keep this up. Now, they got to stay hot by going through the hot New York Giants suddenly with Tommy DeVito. And as a guy, look, jokingly, we used to think it was funny because we didn't know Tommy DeVito would be a legitimate quarterback, so we're doing all the Italian stuff. I'm an Italian guy who was born in Central Jersey. I get all the stuff. I've lived Tommy DeVito's life before football. I get all that. But Tommy DeVito, the last couple weeks, I'm not going to say it's amazing football because he's not playing amazing football. He was legitimately terrible in the Patriots win. He was terrible. But the Washington game was a fantastic performance, and I think he's shown that he's not just a random camp body practice squad guy, which maybe the Giants thought he was. I think he's a legitimate backup quarterback. I don't want him playing for more than 2 or 3 games in a row because physically he's so limited. But if you want just a couple games, maybe we could be a trap game for a couple guys, DeVito can execute that. Why can't he? He's accurate. He can make plays on the move. He runs. There's some stuff to build on there. It's not just it's not Tim Boyle, where Tim Boyle has no even average traits. Bad arm, bad mobility, can't read the game. That's a bad quarterback. That's not an NFL quarterback. Tommy DeVito, to my surprise, having seen him at Illinois and Syracuse, is not that. He's got actual stuff to build on. And I think some of the early friction, when the Giants just looked like worse than the Jets, worse than the Patriots offense, I think some of that was just Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll really didn't have an idea of kind of what this guy was as a quarterback. So early on, it was just, forget basic. This was Fisher-Price Kitty basic. Don't try anything remotely challenging. And the Jets ate him up. And the Cowboys ate them up. Good teams, but they ate them up. Now I think they've realized, you know what? Barring an act of God, the season's over. F it. Let's just try some different things. And it's worked a lot of times because he actually, for a guy that doesn't have a great arm, arm strength, he's got a weirdly accurate deep ball. All the quarterbacks is getting the ball to guys like Jalen Hyatt more. And Saquon's still effective. You legitimately have to game plan for this guy. It's not like Tim Boyle where we can just put 11 guys on the field and win. If you're looking for a prediction out of this game, I know the Giants are at home. I know it's Tommy DeVito. I know that he's got the momentum, but you know who else has momentum? Freaking Jordan Love. And the Giants defense, I have to give credit to, has been a lot better in the last couple weeks. Kayvon Thibodeau has shaken off some early season criticism. He's been really good. They're still aggressive. I think Deonte Banks is going to eventually be a Pro Bowl corner. I think he's a fantastic young cornerback. Even with all that, I just think Love and all those young receivers they got out there with Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Romeo Doubs, that's a legitimate top 3 you got to worry about. That isn't just young guys figuring it out like it was Rodgers last year and earlier this year. Now I think they're all comfortable. And I think they're going to have enough spice in their attack to beat the Giants. Maybe not by a lot. Maybe let's say, 24-13. That sound okay? Because DeVito will make a couple plays, but I just have a tough like Tommy DeVito going off again in a row against a really good defense. Washington is not a good defense who he went off against. Then he played New England, who actually, for all their faults, New England defense this year legitimately is very, very good. And he looked very, very bad. I think this would be a good litmus test for kind of what Tommy DeVito is for the rest of the year. Because even if Tyrod Taylor's back, I think they'll just ride out the string with him and just kind of see what they got. Now, the other one, Titans-Dolphins. Allegedly on tape, if you do like a tail of tape, this looks like an ass-kicking waiting to happen. And it very well might be. Because defensively, I don't like a lot of what the Titans have. I think Mike Vrabel is still one of like the 10 best coaches in the league. And he's gotten so much out of this personnel in the last couple of years. But this year, I think finally chickens are coming home to roost. And Mike Vrabel can only do so much. And I think the ceiling's kind of caving in a little bit. So the Dolphins can take advantage of that because I don't even need to tell you guys how an offense that has the extremely accurate Tua Tagovailoa, the mad scientist Mike McDaniel, and the speed freak Tyreek Hill can cause problems. They're just gonna. And then they're going to pound the ball on the ground. Raheem Mostert, I believe, has 16 touchdowns this year. Devon Achane's averaging like 9 yards a carry. Such a great speedy back. Like, they just come at you everywhere. Even tight ends are okay, for crying out loud. Offensive line's been playing better too. To beat the Dolphins, the only hope they got is they got to, without Jeffrey Simmons, they have to win the battle up front. And they got to hit Tua hard early and kind of knock him off his spot. Because in the few games where he struggled this year, really throughout the last couple years with McDaniel, that's when they've been able to really take advantage of him, is when they can hit him early and kind of knock him off center. Because what makes him good is he's great with timing. And if Mike McDaniel says a ball's going to be open there at this time, he throws it to him perfectly accurately. That's his strength. Sometimes I think making up plays out of structure, he's good at it, but I think that that's one of the weaker parts of his game. So if there's a path to an upset there, I think that's it. If there's a path to proving that Miami, who's now the number 2 seed in the AFC, and with Jacksonville and Kansas City losing, I feel like it's going to be Baltimore or Miami 1-2 in some order. The chance to prove they're not a legitimate 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, I think it rests on Will Levis and the Titans to kind of show them kind of what they are. And Levis has had kind of a weird first few games because I know he has DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry. Like, that should be great for a young quarterback. But there's been a lot of games where he just can't get anything going. He gets stuck in the mud a lot. He gets sacked a lot, 19 sacks in 6 games. And there are some throws where you're like, oh boy, that inaccuracy. I mean, he has 3 games of under 56% completion this year. But again, that was the rub of coming out of Kentucky on Will Levis, was super strong arm, great leader, great locker room guy, can make plays when you need him to out of structure, but he just doesn't have the accuracy yet. So all of that is working against Will Levis. And it sounds like, oh man, he's struggling. But also, when you look at the team around him, because outside of Hopkins, there's really not like a great wide receiver 2 option. Treylon Burks is hurt. Chigo Okonkwo is an okay tight end, but if that's your number 2 receiving option in a passing league, I don't think it's anything to write home about. Henry's getting older. He's still great, but he's not the Derrick Henry that was an all-pro all the time. Tyjae Spears hasn't been as good as he was earlier in the year. And this offensive line is a mess. It's a mess. It's a train wreck. Guys are getting hurt. They're playing backups. It's not good. So I'm judging Levis on if they get an offensive line for him and like one more really good receiver, how good would he be? And my honest reaction is I think he'd be pretty good because the degree of difficulty on some of the throws he's made, you're like, okay, this is a wow throw. If we just get the right guys around him, I think we could get something. I think we could really have something here. And in a tough AFC South, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence, in whatever order you deem, Levis has to hit for him. And I think they're actually pretty close. Like Will Levis is in a better situation than Bryce Young, but I think offensive line-wise, it's not that much different. And I think Will Levis is just operating much better. And now he'll play a Miami team that has Jalen Ramsey, who's playing phenomenal. He'll probably be on Hopkins for a lot of the game. But the front seven for a contending team is really not that scary to me. So I think this is a good team for Levis in, warm weather, not going to be playing in 20 degrees and snow, to really show everybody what he's made of. Will he win? I don't think so. I just think Miami's going to probably put up like 31 points and maybe a 31-23 win. But I think both fan bases will get what they want out of this game. The Dolphins will win convincingly, I think, and then Tua is going to put up a ton of yards and strengthen his Pro Bowl or All-Pro case. And they'll end up right back with Baltimore. They'll keep pace with them. And Levis, even if they lose and Levis looks good, I think that's what the Titans fans want right now. Is we don't really care about wins and losses. We want a good draft pick. But if we can see stuff from Levis to build on, that's what we want to see. And I think there's a lot of good stuff he's done. So with that, thank you guys for joining the Stack in the Box Week 14 recap. We'll be back next week for the Week 15 recap. I love doing these. I love that you guys tune in. So thank you guys for showing your support wherever it is. Download the Stack in the Box podcast on all the major podcast platforms. Leave a 5-star review. Give this stream a like. Make sure you subscribe to Stack in the Box on YouTube. We passed 9,400 subs recently, which we can't even believe. We're just stunned. Thank you guys so much for that. But until next time, I am Mike Luciano of the Jet Press, and I'm signing off, and we'll see you guys next Monday.